Hi guys. I hope everybody's having a good Saturday. The snow finally stopped here. I know for some of my friends in Ontario, they are in the midst of an ice storm. So hopefully you guys are safe and well. I lived in Ontario at the last big ice storm in 1998, 97, 98. And it was terrible. It was an absolute disaster. So hopefully you guys can skirt the worst of this one and everything as well. So, but just wanted you to know that everybody here on the East Coast is thinking about you and hoping for the best. So, to everybody else, thanks for joining me. I hope everybody's enjoying some nicer weather. We had snow most of the week. We were supposed to have rain, but it's the Maritimes and it's March. So
we don't know what
anything goes. We might get rain, probably get snow. Sometimes we get both at the same time. So you just never know. One thing about the East Coast, if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute. So right now it is blazingly sunny. I don't think there's a cloud in the sky. It is absolutely beautiful, and it's actually warming up. And all that snow that we got in the last couple of days is now melting. So spring is on the way. Let's hope. And Miss Mays is busy.
We were trying to get her on the chair.
She was going to start the live today, but she didn't like the rolly chair.
It moved too much.
It just moved way too much. So we do have some great giveaways today, courtesy of Deckwart and Tombow. We have some fun stuff. So we've got some designer series brushes from Deckwart, and we have a gorgeous limited edition mechanical pencil set from Tombow. It's beautiful, comes with a nice big knock eraser, and I believe they're sort of a robin's egg blue, which I thought was pretty appropriate given the time of year. So we have a set of those to give away. Plus there's always, a few other little goodies tucked into that envelope as well. So those are our good giveaways for today. To get your name on the wheel, all you have to do is join in the chat, become part of the conversation, ask a question, or hit all the subscribe buttons, the like buttons, the share buttons, all of that good stuff. That's all you really have to do. Just join in the fun. That's all I ask. So we are going to be doing something with a summery, beachy theme today. I'm all about the beach. I love anything to do with the beach, whether it's sea glass or hunting for shells or just walking in the salt air. It's all good to me. I love being anywhere near the beach. So this one was actually inspired by a lovely lady that contacted me by the name of Robin Wood. Hi, Robin, if you're watching. She told me what she was looking for and couldn't find it, and I just sort of ran with it. She gave me a little inspiration, and this is the result. I really am quite happy with this. I think Robin was quite happy too. So if you guys are ready to get started on the Beach House Welcomes, so am I. I love this one. I love the colors in this one. Everything about it is just fun, and it's really surprisingly easy to paint. You don't have to work too hard to do this one. But there are quite a few steps, and I've added some interesting colors to this. One of which was in last year's colors. If I can find it, here it is. Twilight. I love this color. It's a deep purpley blue, very transparent, and works a treat for this. Oh, there's Robin Wood. Hello. Good to have you with us. So this is Twilight. We're using this one as part of our shading color. Now, I know that this is an odd combination, but it really works beautiful. So we're going to be using Twilight. And we're also going to be using one of the newest colors this year. It's called Coral Buzz. Somebody said it looked very much like Tea Berry. Pretty close. I think the same color family. The minute you put it on the surface, though, it looks completely different. This one almost has a neon quality to it. It's very bright. So it's a very pretty. And I thought it would do nicely to make that starfish pop. So I thought we'll use that. We've got some nice coral tones with that Coral Buzz, bright salmon. Those are the bulk of our colors. Of course, the Bahama blue and the black and the white for the background. A little bit of burlap for our rope. along with some asphaltum because I can't paint anything without using asphaltum. And then I threw in a little bit of country red because we needed a deeper red tone in here. So we've got a little bit of that. And then, of course, we've got some black and white. So this one is, although it might look complex and difficult to get that sort of more realistic looking shell, I think you're really going to like this technique. Not difficult and a lot of fun. So we're going to get started with that background. Now, I'm a huge fan. I have one prepped already with the Tracy one. I'm a huge fan of that sort of weathered wood look. I really, really like that. And so I wanted to keep going with that because I think it ties really nicely to that beachy theme. So I've got a base coat of lamp black, and I'm just going to lightly sand this. Just very lightly. I just want to take a little of the sharp edges off. There we go. And we're going to use warm white. That's our first step. A little bit of warm white. And you're going to need a fugly brush for this one. And for those of you that aren't familiar, the fugly brush is a Dynasty and Caustic oval. Essentially, I call it my fugly brush for a reason. Because by the time they get to the point where you can paint almost anything with them, this is what they look like. This is a fugly brush. When they're new, they look a little more like this. This one has also been through the ringer, but not quite as bad as the other one. So we're going to take a little bit of warm white, and we're going to use horizontal strokes, very loose, light touch. We're not trying to base coat this. We're trying to create a little visual texture. So you're just going to apply some warm white like that. I put a little water in it. And we want to see some of that black showing through. So we're not looking for perfection here. We want some flaws. Just like that. That's about all you need to do with that white. I like seeing lots of the black showing through, whether it's not necessarily in big chunks, but in small areas. I also like to see it so that it's not solid white. We've got bits of gray, we've got some white, we have it streaky. Some places are brighter, some are darker. That's what we want to see. And we've got a whole bunch of new folks in here. You may have been here before, but I've never seen your name on here. Marlene Dombrowski, nice to have you with us. And Kim Roberts McCutcheon Peters, that's a mouthful, but very good to have you with us. And there's my girl, Sandy Hutton Scales. Hello, sweetheart. And Deanna Swindlehurst from BC. I can imagine it's wet out there. It is spring. And a good friend, Val Clemens and Bev. And Elaine Vitamin. Nice to have you with us. It's so nice to see a whole bunch of different names joining us, unfamiliar names. You may have watched before, but I've just recently gotten a monitor so that I can see the chat a bit more clearly. Renee's my techie, so he's got me set up with all the goodies. And if he's watching, maybe he can help me figure out how come I'm not seeing YouTube on here. And Donna Pauls, hello. Well, give Rich my best. Hi, Rich. Glad to have you with us, too. Oh, you already got your pattern, Debbie. Good, good, good. Beverly Else Winkleman, hello. Nice to have you with us. And Donna Baker, hello, sweetie. Good morning, Linda. How are things in the peg? And Lori Fuller, nice to see you. So this is almost dry. Good heavens. This is almost dry. I don't want to put the next coat over wet paint because then it'll just make a mess. But I think we're good enough. So this technique is just essentially layering colors one on top of the other. So we've got a little bit of Bahama Blue. This is another color that I tend to favor quite a bit, is Bahama Blue. I just love this color. I use it all the time. Ooh, got lots of snow in the peg. Brr. I know you guys have had that snowstorm that blew through. Now Ontario's getting an ice storm. Good morning. Spring cleaning, Denise? You should have a paintbrush in your hand, not a mop. So I'm taking a little bit of Bahama Blue and we're going to go over this in the same way that we did the white. Just a little bit of color. And we want the same thing to happen. We want bits of that black to show through. I'm also thinning this paint just a little, mainly because I don't want it to be fully opaque. And this blue tends to cover quite well. So I've got a little bit of water or glaze in my brush because I want to expose some of those streaks and those flaws in that background. Just like that. Now, if you wanted to, say you wanted a different color, you could absolutely use a different color. If you would prefer, say, a green or a darker blue, you could absolutely do a darker color. I'm just kind of fond of this Bahama Blue. The other thing I like is sort of that dry look. When you come over it, you get this sort of dry, it looks flaky and dry. I love that look. There's Virginia Hedges. Hello. There we go. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, I'm not seeing the chat, so I'm not ignoring you. I just can't see you. There we go. So that is about as difficult as this background gets. What is for dinner tonight? Tonight we're having burgers. It's such a nice day. I thought burgers would be good. So I've got some nice ground sirloin, and I have some really good buns upstairs and all the trimmings. So we're going to most likely have a little bit of poutine to go along with our burger. So there is our distressed background. Super easy to do. Ana Beatrice Lopez, hello from Spain. Hello. You've been with us before. It's nice to have you back. Diane Crean from Florida. Hello, Diane. So, simple background, essentially 3 colors. Base coat of black, a very ragged, almost sloppy coat of warm white, and then a similar coat of Bahama Blue. And it leaves you with all of these exposed colors, little bits of white, some of the black, a little bit of the gray. And this contrasts really nicely with the bright white shells, and then of course with that rope that goes around the outside edge. But before we get to the rope, we have a couple of things to do. We're going to create a distressed edge on this panel, and we're going to create some boards. We're going to make this look like boards. And it's surprisingly easy to do. So now the lines are actually in your line drawing. So if you don't want to do this by hand, you can just use the line drawing. But this is what I like doing. I've got a pencil and an eraser, and I have a round brush, and I have black paint. So I'm going to take a little bit of lamp black. And I have a little bit of my favorite Jo Sonja glaze. I use the Jo Sonja's Fast Dry glaze for everything. Floating, thinning, I use it for everything. So we're going to thin out a little bit of lamp black. And we're going to put a little distressed edge along the outside edge of our board. Now, because we're putting a rope on this, I didn't want this to be too thick. So I'm keeping it narrow so that it doesn't interfere with the rope. But we still want to have that sort of distressed look, so we're keeping it simple. Just a light touch around the outside edge. Super easy. And this is all I do, is I just move the brush along the edge, and then I push and pull so that I get that broken effect, that kind of chipped look. I don't want this just to be a straight line. I want it to have a little bit of texture. But it doesn't have to be really big. And the other thing is that some of those stripes, those worn areas, are going to fall into this, so it just helps it along. There we go. Easy peasy. A little bit of black. I love this look. I tend to make it thicker on some pieces, thinner on others. There's times when a really heavily distressed edge is appropriate, and other times when it's not. Miss Tracy and Renee, greetings from El Salvador. Lily Mendoza, hola. Good to have you with us. Mucho gusto. El Salvador. I loved South America when I was there. Absolutely loved it. There we go. Almost done. There. So we have a narrow distressed look around the outside edge. We're going to dry that. And then we're going to put a float of asphaltum around the outside edge, just to keep it nice and warm. Does the glaze in the jar get muddy when I reload? Oh yeah, it does eventually, but the pigment sinks to the bottom. So it stays white like this for quite a while. Usually by the time I get this low, it's, a light gray. And then I just dump it and get some fresh. So there we go. So I want to put a nice little line down the middle. And I wanted to show you how to do that. Now, on my other one, I haven't done the chipped edge, and I've just traced my line drawing on. But I wanted to show you how to do this first, and then we'll do the board. Now, I'm going to measure about 2.5 inches, because that's generally about what it is, 2.5 inches. Put a little mark, and then 2.5 inches, put a little mark. And then you're going to use a ruler or anything straight. And at that 2.5 inch mark, I can find mine. Where did it go? I lost it. I lost my 2.5 inch mark. You ever have one of those days where you couldn't find your butt with both hands? I'm having one of those days. Okay. So I just need a relatively straight line, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but I just want to indicate where my line is. There we go. And then the fun part is that then you can just draw your line straight across here. There. So now we have 3 boards indicated on here. Now, this part I really like because you can have a little bit of fun with this. And I'm going to use this one, my Identi-Pen. And I'm going to freehand the line with my Identi-Pen. Now, the reason I'm freehanding the line is I don't want it to be just a solid, straight black line. I kind of want it to be flawed a little. So as long as I'm kinda straight, I'm okay. So there's one line. There are certain things that are, there are times when a perfectly straight line are essential and then times when they're not. And this is one of the not. Should be straight, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm just putting a line in with my Identi-Pen. It's going to have some wonky little bits in it. That's okay. Because this is wonky wood. So we have a line there. We have a line up there. Now I'm going to take, I've got a nice big angled shader. Nice big one. And we're going to take some asphaltum. Those of you who have painted with me before know that this is probably my favorite all-time color. Asphaltum gets more use from me. So, I'm going to get a little bit of fast dry glaze on my brush. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of asphaltum. I'm going to blend this out really well. I don't want this color to be solid or too dark. So this is what I'm looking for. If you look at the little window side, I want a very watery. Yes, Debbie, absolutely. If you prefer to use a liner brush to do that, by all means. And I'm going to go all the way around the outside edge of my piece with a really loose float of asphaltum. Does not have to be perfect. Get a little into those corners. Around the corner. And of course, the float that I'm putting on is right out of the shot. There we are. Little float. I love a nice loose float. Remember, we're aging this. This is not a perfect shadow. We are trying to get this to look aged. So there we go. Now, I like it a little darker in those corners, but that's entirely up to you. So here we go. I've got a nice little float all the way around the outside edge. Is it perfect? Nope. Does it need to be? Nope. And then we're going to do the same thing to those 2 lines in the center. I'm going to quickly dry this though. There we are. So on either side of that line, I'm going to put a float of asphaltum. Just like so. Neatness doesn't count. Perfection is to be avoided at all cost. So there we are. I'm going to pick up a little color. So now I have 1, 2, 3 boards. I'm going to dry this. And then we're going to put a light wash of the same color over the whole thing. Lily, I will check out Instagram, absolutely. I'd love to see what you've done. Patsy Justice, hello, sweetie. And Brenda Sawyer. Darlene Greenwood. So I've got this, well, it's still not quite dry. Let me make sure this is dry. I love this distressed look, Denise. I've done it on a great many projects. I just think it works so well. Dorothy Holgate from the Office of the Governor of Pennsylvania. My goodness. We are an esteemed company. And Don Kenny Paksowski. Good to have you with us. So I'm going to thin out a little more of that asphaltum. And I'm going to just apply a very thin wash of that color, that mix, over everything. The neat thing about doing it this way is that if you had any outside lines or floats that didn't look perfect, this sort of helps tone them a little and brings them down so they don't look quite so garish or strong. Et voila. So there you go. We've got our nice little distressed panel. Now I'm going to dry this, and from this point, we're going to do a little bit of highlighting. I love this part because this just makes this board look so much more realistic. I know, I don't think I can paint without asphaltum, although I know I have. I don't think I do it very well. No worries, Dorothy. So we're going to add a little highlight to this and a little more depth just to make it look a little more distressed, because I love that. And you have a couple of options. You can use a white gel pen, or you can use a white Posca pen, one of the fine ones, or you can use a liner. You do not have to use a marker for this, but you absolutely can if it makes it easier for you. That's my view. If it makes it easier for you, it's a win. So you can use these white Posca pens. This is a 0.7 millimeter. I love these. These things are so handy, and they make a lot of these little steps just that much easier. The difference between these two, the Posca pen in this Uni Posca, this little mini one, the 0.7, is acrylic paint. So it is perfectly compatible with varnishes and all of those things, which makes this, an added benefit. The gel pen has the benefit of being a little bit finer. The downside is this one is a gel and it is water soluble. So until it's completely dry and sealed, you can reactivate it, which means you could smear it if you're brushing on varnish and whatnot. So I always recommend sealing this, if you've used a gel pen, to seal your painted piece with a spray varnish or a spray fixative before you varnish. To me, that's just a smart thing to do. And then you avoid any potential problems. So either one will work perfectly well. It just means that your technique later down the line has to be a little bit different. That's all. And then, of course, we have, perhaps one of the best and simplest methods, and that is just to use a little bit of thinned warm white and your favorite liner brush. all of them work just fine. But for the sake of expediency today, I'm going to use my Posca pen. I'm going to prime this little puppy. Just means I gotta shake it. And pump it so that there we go. White paint. So one of the things I like to do is just to, on the bottom side of this black line, I'm just going to put a little skippy white line. A few dots. Doesn't have to be much. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just to follow that line, you do need to have a little highlight there. Keep it simple. Don't overthink it. Et voila. And you do the same thing to the other one. And I'm working on the bottom below the line, so you're exposing the line. Now, that puts a nice highlight in, but I wanted to show you something really quick. If you want to really make this look quite rustic, say you want a few other little flaws, you can take your liner brush and just create a few. Put a little gap in that line, just like that. Opens it up a bit, makes it look a little more chunky, gives it a little more character, I think. I like those little flaws in the wood. But that's me. I like the flaws. So I'm going to continue with my little white highlights. Kind of like that I can, manipulate them a little bit. It just makes for a really nice effect a little further down the line too. Always think that a solid straight white line is not nearly as interesting. So it's a fine highlight, but it is there. So now we've got 3 boards showing up quite well. So I'm going to take that same pen and I'm going to highlight the edge of that chipped look all the way around. I just really like how this looks. If you prefer to not do that, that's fine. For me, it's just a nice little extra detail that goes on to this. It isn't essential, but it's a nice little extra. But again, if you prefer to not do it, that's fine. So from this point, you could design on top of this, put anything you wanted on top of this. If you just wanted it to say welcome, just put welcome. Want to make gone fishing? Just put gone fishing on it and it would be fine. You don't have to do everything exactly how the pattern says, but use this technique any way that works for you. I love seeing what people do with it. It's a nifty effect. It can be done in almost any color. It looks great just done with the white and a little asphaltum. It looks great all by itself. It makes for a really neat look. If you want to paint the bottom of a tray that does this, it looks really good. There's so many different ways you could use this. It doesn't necessarily have to be a background. It can be the only thing that you do. And it still works. So, such a fun way to finish off this edge. And it looks finished. It gives things a nice specific border. And it doesn't ever have to be perfect. That's the best part. It works no matter what. So don't feel it has to perfectly follow that black line either. It doesn't. You can play with it a little bit. Go that way. Accentuate some of those chips that you put in, like those funky bits. Accentuate those. But it frames up everything that follows really nicely. Super simple. So no matter what you put on this, it's going to look really great. So I'm going to dry that. Such a fun finish. It's great for fall pieces, great for summer pieces. It's really cute for Christmas pieces too because it has that, country look to it. There's so many different things that you can do using this background. I have the sunflower country. It is done on the very same background, just reverse the colors. Here we go. So there you are. That is your background for this piece. Super easy. And this one is going to give you that same look, especially once we start layering in all of the shadows, shells, and all of those things. We get that really cool depth back here. This part is so fun, getting all of this depth back in here. It is so easy and it's so fun to do. You're going to love this. So here is mine. I already have this one traced out. And I love the look of this. There's something about the look of this piece. I'm going to keep this one for something else. So I've got my pattern is already traced onto this one. I don't have any of the shading and whatnot done, but that's okay because we're just going to focus on the design elements for this one. So we've got a bunch of different things going on here and a change in textures going on here. We have the starfish that has that rougher texture. We have the shells that are going to have a chalky like texture. And then we've got the rope that's going to have the, a little more of a fabric type texture. What was the size of the Posca pen? The one that I used is the fine point. These are the pin tip. I can get that up to the thing so you can see it. These are the pin tip Posca pens. I love these. This one is white and it's a 0.7 millimeter. Great pens. And if you're looking for a source for these, I got this set through Dick Blick. I order a lot of this stuff through Dick Blick because they're exceptional. But they have this one. I really love these. And if you need to replace any one of these, the colors are individual as well. I've ordered replacements for the white one and the black one through Amazon. So they're easy to get. So we're going to work on the background for this piece. And there's two colors in particular that we're going to be using. So Twilight is one and the other is Asphaltum. I know it's kind of freaky. It's kind of freaky with the color choices, but you're going to love this. So a little bit of Twilight and a little bit of Asphaltum. Now we're going to shade the entire background. Everything first. I'm going to use a small angled shader. I'm using a 3/8 faux squirrel and I'm going to use a 1/2 inch faux squirrel. These are my go-to brushes, these faux squirrel, and these ones have seen better days, but the business end of these brushes work like a devil. So this is a 1/2 inch faux squirrel and a 3/8 faux squirrel. And I'm going to start up and in and around these shells. And I'm going to pick up a small amount of Twilight. Blend it out well because we don't want this colorful strength. And I'm going to start in here, in and around the shell. We're just going to put a light wash and then a float of that pretty Twilight. It's a beautiful color. It's an absolutely beautiful color. And it is perfect for water. It has that rich blue, deep blue to purple tone. and it's very transparent. And I do know that on the camera, it's showing up much lighter than it actually is. It is quite a dark color. And we're going to float up and underneath our shells with it. I like the smaller brush for those smaller areas. That's why I'm using that 3/8. And I'm not too worried. If I get this color up over the edge of the shell, it's okay. It's not really a big deal, to be perfectly honest, because we're going to paint over it anyway. Okay, so I've got a little of that twilight up there. And I'm going to switch to my bigger angled shader for this. I'm going to take a little of that twilight. And we're going to shade all along the edge of our rope on the inside to the left, on the left side. No, Debbie, I don't. You can get the brushes at thebrushguys.com. And if you're shopping there, you use the coupon code Tracy M. Capital T, R-A-C-Y, capital M. And it'll give you a further discount on any of the brushes that you buy there. So on the right side, you're going to put a float of that same twilight outside of the rope. Just like that. And then I like to take it along the bottom. Just a little wash of it. It doesn't have to be a perfect float, just a little wash of it along the bottom. And then just sort of let it run out right about at about the 2/3 mark. And I'm doing the same up here at the top. On the left, on the right side, outside. And I stop right about the center. There we go. Just like that. I love this color. On top of Bahama Blue, it's just beautiful. There we are. So I know it doesn't show up that well, but it'll have sort of a watercolory look, which is kind of what we want on this. So it has that soft, heavily distressed look. It's not a perfect float by any means. Good morning, Carol. Oh, we're going to shade with asphaltum, Donna. We're going to go over this with asphaltum. So I'm going to take a little bit of asphaltum on my brush. Again, I heavily thin it. You don't need to have it full strength. And we're going to go right over top of that blue with that thinned asphaltum. And it just tones it nicely. It deepens the color and it tones it at the same time. The nice part about this is that you don't have to be all that neat and tidy because you haven't put any of the base colors in yet, so it's a little more forgiving. Although it looks very sloppy, it's fine. Et voila. So that little bit of asphaltum just tones that blue, brings it all into place. And it deepens it at the same time. I'm going to dry it real quick. And then we're going to do the same thing to our lettering. So I'm going to use my 1/2 inch angle, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of twilight. Such a pretty color. And we're going to float into the curves of the lettering like so. So I've got a nice little float of that pretty twilight. There's something about this color. It's just, especially when you thin it out, it takes on that tone, like what I refer to as lavender skies. It's that purplish tone you see at sunset. It's just really pretty. So a little float. Again, I'm using this float very loosely because you can, and it doesn't harm anything to do it loosely. There we go. So now we've got this nice soft float, that nice purpley tone in our background and on our lettering. And when I hold it up, you can see I've gone right over the lettering. It doesn't hurt. Does not hurt. If you don't have twilight, absolutely you could use just asphaltum. It's not going to hurt anything. So I'm going to dry this real quick. And make sure that's good and dry, and then we're going to deepen that float again with a float of asphaltum. So small amount of asphaltum, thin it out really well, and just float right over those other colors with the asphaltum. Again, nice and loose. It does not have to be perfect. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for tone. We want a nice warm purpley undertone. I love asphaltum used this way. There we go. So I've got a little bit of asphaltum on there. Right there. Asphaltum is such a great color for toning, bringing other colors into line. Beauty. There we go. So I know it looks like a sloppy mess. I am not seeing any of the YouTube chat. So I'm not sure why. Seeing everybody from Facebook today. Usually it's the other way around. So we're going to start with the lettering on this one. Ordinarily, I leave the lettering till the end, but in this particular case, we're going to do it first because I need to do some sanding after the lettering is done. And I don't want to interfere with anything else like the shells. So I'm going to start with, I'm using a 0 rigger for this. And warm white is my color of choice. It usually is. I love my warm white. And I'm going to thin that out with a little bit of Joe Sonia's. The Fast Dry Glaze. I use it for everything. Lettering, line work, instead of water. I am glad I'm seeing the Facebook chat, but not the YouTube chat. So I'm using warm white to fill in my lettering, and a zero rigger. The nice part about a rigger is this. Although it looks like such a skinny brush, I can press down on that thing and open it up and fill in that space quite easily, even though it's almost 3 times the width of the brush. And oh goodness, too much liquid in my brush. Here we go. Now the fun part about this, for this lettering, is it does not need to be fully opaque. We're going to distress the lettering anyway, so trying to get the lettering fully opaque is quite literally counterproductive. We just want even coverage. Doesn't have to be fully opaque. We just want even coverage. That's all. There we go. Once you get used to using a rigger for doing this, you can paint lettering pretty quickly. And I love brush lettering. And part of what goes with brush lettering are those little flaws. Those little wobbles and bobbles and things that show up in the lettering, or little thin spots. That's part of the charm of it. For me at least, I love seeing old vintage signs that were hand painted and seeing the little flaws and bobbles where whoever was painting it, their hand wasn't quite as steady, or the brush didn't quite have enough paint. And so when it aged, as the work aged, it wore in unique and unusual ways. And I think a lot of that is lost. I know, Kathy McAllister. I am missing the beach vibe too. Looking forward to warm enough weather. The font for this is just a standard. It's on Microsoft Word. It's nothing fancy. I just liked it. I can't remember what it's called, but it is. It's just a standard font on Microsoft Word. Something script. Doesn't have to, not everything has to be the super fancy. And I like this. It's just clear. It's almost playful. Yeah, I like the lettering. There we go. Something I saw recently that I haven't seen since craft show days in the 90s was this cute little font with little dots on the tops and bottoms, and it's such a cute little font, and now you can get it on your computer. At the time, we were doing it by hand. But now you can get it on your computer, and it's so cute. Very rustic and very cute looking. And this, we're looking pretty good. So, although when you get a close-up look of this lettering, this one is, thank you, Kathy. Yes, Debbie, it is a zero rigger. Right there. Dynasty Faux Squirrel. This one is a zero rigger. So here is our font. Not perfect by any stretch, but it's relatively uniform as far as color goes, but not fully opaque. It doesn't have to be. So we're going to dry this really well. Hi, Monica. Good to have you with us. And you're welcome, Debbie. Oh, my stars. Hi, Joan Schoen. So we're going to dry this, and then I'm probably going to scare you for the next one. We're going to distress this. It's going to actually have quite a bit of benefit. It might not seem like it at the time, but it does. So make sure this is good and dry. I don't want to have any wet spots or sticky paint. Now the terrifying part. Our boards are running left to right, horizontally, so we're going to sand in the same direction. And I'm going to apply most of the pressure to the lettering. I'm going to try and focus just on the lettering and sand. It's going to have an interesting effect, because when it will also sand your shading. Don't worry about it. Good. Give Bill a hug for me. Tell him I'm glad he made it home safe. So, by sanding this, it wears the lettering just a little. It actually shows some of the color and some of the texture from underneath comes through the lettering. So it gives it a nice soft look. So now that that's done, I'm going to take my big angled shader, the one that I shaded and highlighted with, and use just a little bit of clean water. And I'm going to run a brush over it like that, just to take some of that dust off. Here we go. That's the hard part out of the way. Having trouble with sound? Try refreshing the page, Monica. Your browser. Yeah. So there's our lettering. I love the look of this when it's sanded a little. I love the worn look. It appeals big time. So our next stage is to do that rope. And I'm going to give myself a clean palette for this. We're going to use a double loaded technique on an angled shader. And most people use that technique for shading, but in this particular case, we're going to use it for base coating as well. So the color that I'm using is burlap, and I'm using asphaltum. And I'm going to use a 1/2 inch angled shader. And the stroke we're going to use is called an S stroke. We're going to pick up a little bit of burlap on the toe of the brush and a little asphaltum on the heel. So if you can see that on the camera. And then we're going to blend the two colors together. like so. Now, an S stroke works like this. Stand the brush on the chisel edge. You pull down towards you. At the same time, you're moving the brush over and down. Over and down. Over and down. And then you're just going to abbreviate the stroke. Keep it loose. And this is how we're going to paint our rope. So like that, and then join the two, join the two, join the two. There's your rope. It's an easy technique, but it does take a little bit of practice. If you're not familiar with basic stroke work, it can be a little challenging, and it does take a little bit. Debbie, it's a 1/2 inch angle. Hi, Pauline. And so that's how we're going to do this rope. Just like that. I don't quite have enough paint in my brush. I have a lot of water, but not enough paint. There we go. So it's always surprising the first time somebody does this, that just how easy it is. And you'll notice that I'm not worrying too much about the actual tracing. I'm just using it as a guide to follow the shape. That's all I'm really doing. There we go. The nice part is you can go back over it. So that's how difficult that rope is. Now, the better you get at this S stroke, the easier it's going to be. Take the time to blend it. I did not blend it well enough, but there we go. And if they're wonky, it's all right. It's a rope. Doesn't have to be absolutely crisp and perfect because it's a rope. And it's an old fishing rope. And we're going to clean it up a little bit, so don't worry. We're just getting this base color in. And I've got way too much water in this brush. Ever have one of those days where we just get too much water in it? And that's what I've been getting, too much water. So, blend, 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 blend. I'm a born blender. So, although it's a little rudimentary, we have a rope. Now, if you're working in a smaller area, you can switch to a smaller angle shader. And I have got a couple of spots where I need to be a little tighter, especially underneath these shells. So I want to, here we go. There we go. Look at that. So again, just a simple S stroke. You can do leaves. You can do a whole range of things with an S stroke. S stroke is a very handy stroke to learn. Here we go. And it does look quite sloppy for a little bit, and it will. That's okay. We have the technology to make this look so good. And a little bit of shading, a little bit of highlighting, a little bit of work is going to make it look great. So I've just got a couple little corner elements to clean up, like right here. And I'll tuck one in there as well. But I have my base coat in. Easy peasy. Look at that. So what brand of rigger brush? It's a Dynasty Faux Squirrel. Sorry, Charmaine. Your thread's bunching up, it could be your tension, Cindy, but then I think you probably know that. So yes, all in all, the border looks a little sloppy, and it does, just for a little bit. But we're going to clean that up, no worries. Look at that. So we've got our base coat in. Now we're going to take, this is where we fine tune things. We're going to use a little bit of asphaltum, and we're going to do a little bit of shading. So right over those areas of asphaltum, we're going to put in a float. Just like that. Nice and tight and clean. And it just makes your rope look a little smoother. We don't have any of the YouTube chat. There we are. No, I can't float with you kissing me. No, I can't. Oh, there it is, Patrick. Of course it's okay.
Had to hit the.
Yeah.
Had to hit the tripod with the.
Miss Mays is helping.
Are you helping?
Yeah. So little float with asphaltum, just to accentuate those whorls in the rope. And then along the bottom, you put a little float like this. And I'm off camera again. I am just batting 1,000 today. I keep sliding it towards myself, but sorry about that, guys. So there's that. Just deepen that float. That shadow, crisp it up. Just makes that rope look even a little more realistic. I'm a big fan. I love that heavily distressed appearance. But I also love it when those things are deepened. You clean up a little bit. I love that you get these nice deep shadows and more of the details show up when you do that. So look at our rope now. Just with that shadow, our rope becomes a little more twisty, I think is the word. Which is what we're looking for. We kind of want that twisted appearance. And then you can put a shadow along the bottom side like that. Just gives it a little more dimension. But again, always keep in mind, none of those things have to be perfect. It's a rope. There, I'm finally starting to see some of the YouTube chat. Hello, guys. Can I zoom out just to chat? I can't, actually. This camera is zoomed in as far as we can. I'm going to get that camera up a little closer so you can see. Now, we're going to... Sandy Anthony, hello. Is Maze having a good day? Maze is Maze. I think that dog has a good day whenever. She was just out playing. So to highlight your rope, because you are going to have to highlight it a little bit, we're going to come back in with that same color, that little bit of burlap, and you're going to do highlight opposite that shadow. And then highlight across the top of that twist. Remember, we shaded across the bottom of it, but now we're going to highlight across the top of it. So, highlight and come across. Those little highlights make a world of difference. By double loading your base coat, it just makes things a whole lot easier when it comes time to highlight after the fact. And then on this side, because this is going to be our highlight side, we're going to come across the top and down. Just like that. There we go. So there's our rope. I love this method. It's fast and it works remarkably well. And it does give you a nice finish. Just take your time doing it. You'll get those nice finished edges. I usually come in with a little bit of gel pen, a little bit of ink, because I like that. I like that look. I like that sketchy look to things. What watercolor paper do I use? I use two different types, Kathy. This one is recently my favorite. This is Moulin de Roi. This is a Canson hot press watercolor paper. This one is very smooth. I like this for watercolor and I really like it for colored pencil. It's a very nice paper to work with. That's one. And the other one that I use quite a bit is, just a minute, I'll find it. This one. This is Archer's. This is also a hot press. This is Archer's Aquarelle watercolor paper. This is 140 pounds. Also very nice. This one's 100% cotton. Absolutely fabulous watercolor paper. Canson and Strathmore are my two, or Canson and Arches are my two favorites. And I use those for so many things. Both really nice for color pencil, but also for watercolor pencil. Yep. There we go. I'm trying to remember to stay in the bloody shot trace. There we go. Now, half the fun of this is the fact that this is not intended to be hyper realistic. It is intended to look frayed and worn, Denise Chavez. There we go. And there's Becca Buckner. Nice to see you, Becca. And Bet DeLong, nice to have you with us. So, rope is looking pretty good. So I'm going to use a dry brush to add a little bit of warm white to the highlight side of this. And again, I am not looking for a soft dry brush. I'm looking for a dry, coarse dry brush. So this is what I'm going to use. This is a Dynasty Black Silver Dome. It's a scumbler. This is a natural hair. It's very coarse. It's not a pretty brush. Works really well. So we're going to use a little bit of warm white. And I've got some on my brush. I'm also going to blot on a little bit of paper. And I'm going to add just a scumbled or a dry highlight to my rope on the highlight side. It is not neat and tidy. It is not perfect. It's going to look very dry. Right there. That center area. We just want to scumble in a little dry brush. Not perfect. We just want it to look a little dry. Like it's been sitting out in the hot sun near salt water for years. We just want it to look dry. And that dry brush goes right in the middle. Charlene Stevenson. I would imagine you're probably really good at neat and tidy, but there's times when neat and tidy is appropriate and times when it's not. And in this case, this is a dry old rope. So we need it to look like a dry old rope. And I like this look. So the nice part about this is that if a little bit goes over the edge, it's okay. Because it's just going to make it look furry and fuzzy, and these old ropes are terribly fuzzy and furry. Keep it simple. Don't overthink it. There we go. And we're almost there. I'm just coming around to the other side of this. There we go. Et voila. I'm liking it. So, I'm going to quickly dry this just so that I know everything is dry. It was warm white, Milena. And the dry brush that I'm using is a Dynasty Black Silver domed dry brush. Right here. Inexpensive brush, works like a hot damn. Works very well for our purposes. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to clean out my dry brush because we're going to be using that again. And we're going to shade the rope because we're going to... Where did my... Oh, there it is. Okay. We're going to shade the rope where the shells overlap. I'm going to do that with a little bit of asphaltum. So we want to get a fairly good shadow where this shell overlaps our rope. Just like that. So up against the shells, little float of asphaltum. I'm going to shade the bottom. There we go. And around our starfish, I'm going to put a nice little shadow in there as well. It's when you're starting to do these little more detailed floats, this is where you can come in and deepen shadows along your rope, etc. And all along the edge of that shell. And that includes the background. It's the thing to remember that that shadow continues around the edge of the shell, on over the background as well. And I want to deepen this shadow under here a little bit with a little asphaltum. Just want them to be a little darker. There we go. Just a little. Now is the perfect time to do this, because we are going to start base coating our shells and our starfish. And I want these shadows to be really deep, because we want lots of contrast when we're in here. There we go. I love this. So now we are ready to start base coating our shells. And the color of choice is warm white. And I'm going to use a number 5 round. Lily Mendoza. That's a great question, Lily. The only difference between the Deckwart Crafters acrylic and the Americana is the volume of pigment. The Americana have a higher pigment load, but it has the same acrylic base, the same quality of base, just the higher acrylic, the higher pigmentation. So if you can find Crafter's acrylic, if you find they don't cover as well, try putting down a base of gesso underneath them. But as far as the quality of the paint, the only difference between the two is the pigment load. So we're going to pick up a little bit of warm white. We're going to thin this out with a little bit of Joe Sonia's. It's going to be a little thicker than milk. I don't want it to be so thin that it's completely transparent, but I want it to come off the brush fairly easily. So we're going to start with this one over here. Now I'm going to put one coat of warm white on our shell. And I base coat in the shape of the piece that I'm painting. So if I'm painting from the edge of it, I'm pulling my color back. It does not need to be fully opaque. Part of the way I paint these is the reason the shells look the way they do. So if I pull the color back to the point like this, you see where all of those vertical lines, all of those lines in the base coat, all go back to one point. And that's down here at the heel or at the hinge of the shell. You're welcome, Millie. So, a little extra color at the edge, and then I pull it back to the point like that. Do the same thing with the hinge. This little hinge fin here. So if you look at the shell, you see where all of the lines go? Just like that. And yes, there's going to be a little of that blue peeking through. That's okay. Carrie, have a great weekend. And we're going to do the same thing for this one. And again, I start at the edge, shape my edge, but I pull my paint all the way back to the hinge, like that, in long strokes. Like so. And again, you can see I've got blue showing through. It's all good. Leave a tiny narrow space between your forward shell and the large one. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing for that large shell. Don't forget the shape of that edge. It's got a little ruffle. I love painting this way because it means less work in the long run. All those brush marks that we have in there become part of this. And by following the pattern or the shape of the shell, when I lay down the color, any brush marks that I have become part of the shell. Easy peasy. So there are our shells. So they've already, they've already got some height. I'm using a number 5 round, Dynasty Black Gold. Hi, Miss Deb. Good morning. Good morning. For all the Canadians watching, if you are looking for any of the surfaces that I use, or if you're looking for really cool surfaces in general to paint on, go and check out Deb's website at paintingwithdeb.com. She has some awesome laser cut surfaces, including a great many of the ones that I use. So go and check them out. And she ships inside Canada only, just letting you know. And if you are looking for some of her surfaces, she will be happy to direct you to a U.S. source. Brush marks in a painted piece, to me, it depends. Sometimes they're called for, sometimes they're not. But there's ways to base coat so that you don't get a lot of that. But there's also ways to create textures and make your life a little simpler. And that is by using those brush marks to your benefit. So our Starfish is base coated with coral shell. It's a very pretty color. It is very pretty. And again, I base coat following the shape of my surface. So in this case, Starfish come to a point right there. So I come back to the point. How do I avoid ridges? I use the fast dry glaze. And I thin my paint. I'd rather put on 2 coats than just one rough one. And use a light touch. A little bit of paint and move it out. And the color I'm using, Charmaine, is Coral Shell. Very pretty coral tone. Coral Shell, no, is an older color. It's been around for quite a while, actually. I think it came out in like 2016. It's a very pretty light coral tone. It's a mid-tone, so it's not super transparent, but depending on what color you put it over. In this case, it's showing the blue quite a bit, so I'm using it thinned, so I anticipate it showing some of that blue through, and that's okay because we can dry it and we can put another light coat over top. Wonder why I can never get the basmati rice as separated as in the. Oh, I put a little oil in my water, Patrick, just a little, and I wash my rice. I shouldn't say wash it, but I rinse it beforehand. And I found that makes a big difference too. I add the oil right at the beginning. Put it in the water, and then I dump my rice in when it's ready. Yep. Little oil, it can be almost anything. A little vegetable oil. You can use butter. Whatever oil you like working with. Coconut oil, actually, it's a really nice flavor to things. So there we go. Such a pretty color, this coral shell. I'm really liking this piece. Dun, dun, dun. There we go. So I've got, okay, I'm much happier with that base coat now. Doesn't have to be fully opaque. I just didn't like the, the fairly heavy blue showing through. So I'm going to dry that. So I'm going to show you a really nifty technique. Remember when I said that the blue in the shells, that's showing through the shells because of that thinned paint, is going to work in our favor. So here's how we're going to do that. In the pattern, there is a ruffled edge on the edge of the shells. I want to show you this because I think it's important. On the edge of your shells, it kind of goes like this. It has this curved edge. And then in between those, we have lines that go like this, back towards the hinge of the shell. Correct? We want to shade this way on those indentations. So we're going to put a float of bright salmon in each of those little dips at the edge. And it's going to come down about a half an inch or a little bit more. Okay? You'll see what I mean. When you're in there, we're going to use a small angled shader. I don't usually paint with anything smaller than a 3/8, so I'm going to use my 3/8. I'm going to grab a new one because I want a nice chisel edge. There we go. Okay. So I've got a 3/8. And my color is bright salmon. And I know it's a strong color, and that's okay. I love this color. So you're going to load as if to float. Blend it well. I did not have enough moisture in my brush. There we go. That's better. So in that dip, in those dips, and it shows in the line drawing, we're going to put a nice little C-shaped float. Now I like to chisel it back a little bit to the edge and chisel it back. So it's about a half an inch, and let it fade. Just let it run out a little bit, like so. You're going to do that all the way along. Now it's going to get a little narrower as you go. As each of those little areas gets narrower going along the edge of the shell, it's going to get a little narrower. Like that. And each of those, always keep the heel of your brush pointing back towards this point, that point of that hinge, if you will. Because that's technically what it is. It's a hinge. It just aims back towards the hinge. There. Like that. Pretty neat. And then you're going to take that color as well. And you're going to float into the hinge. Darkest color to the outside edge. Just like that. And it's going to come up the shell about a 1/2 inch. Not bad. Do I add glaze medium to my base coat? Yes, always. It helps level out any brush marks so that you don't get ridges. Yep. Here we go. So, and then while you're at that, you're going to use that same color to shade along the hinge right here. Just to separate that a little bit. And you're going to do that for all 3 of those shells. Always amazes me that that little float makes such a difference. And it's all of a sudden, this shell has more dimension. So I'm going to do the same thing to each of these as well. The nice part about having that thin white base coat is that for the most part, you can see your line drawing through that paint. So it makes it a little bit easier. But if you can't, then you can just guesstimate. Or you can take a pencil and put it back on if you want to. It is okay. There we go. I love the fact that none of this is hyper realistic. It is not meticulously floated. It has a more painterly feel to it by using this method. So even though you're using some of the same techniques, the application is a little bit different. And it's a little less structured. So the end result is that it looks more natural and less toll painted. The color I'm using is bright salmon, Gail. I love that bright salmon. It's so, so pretty. So again, for each of these shells, same thing. A little bit. Bring that back down about 1/2 inch. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. There is a lot to be said for imperfections. There we go. Now, we're going to take a little bit of that, remember our base color, a little bit of Bahama blue. And we're going to just accentuate some of the blue that's showing through Okay, my bottle is nearly empty. We're just going to accentuate some of the blue that's showing through that shell. And there is a method to my madness. I'm going to thin out a little bit of Bahama Blue on an angled shader, using just a little bit of glaze. And inside the strip where there is that coral, we're just going to add a little wash of Bahama Blue. I just want to bring up that blue a little more. That's all. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just bringing a little blue in. So I'm using the brush on the chisel edge for this. Just like that. So now look, we've got blue stripes on our shells. And it's in the same groove that that coral is, that coral shell is, or not coral shell, bright salmon. I just want a little bit of that blue showing in there, a little stronger than it was. That's okay. So each of those shells gets that little bit of blue. Just like that. And back towards that point. There we go. And this part shocks people. So I'm going to dry this really well. And then we're going to take a rigger and warm white. I'm going to thin it out a little bit, just so that it moves well on the brush. I'm going to do it on this small shell so you can see. So I'm going to bring that warm white right to the edge of the shell, and I'm going to pull it back towards the hinge. And I'm just going to let it run out. So brightest at the edge, a little bit at the top. Not perfect, it's just a stroke. A little bit of white. Oops. Needs to be a little thinner. It's a little too opaque there. There we go. And just sort of let it run out back towards the hinge. See what it happens? I load it as if to float and then use the brush on the chisel edge. So look what happens to that shell the minute I do that. You could do it with a round in the larger areas if you want to. It doesn't have to be perfect. So essentially all we're doing is we're highlighting the upper part of that ridge on the shell. So there is a ridge, a ripple in the shell. We've shaded it with that blue and that coral, and now we're highlighting that ridge with a stroke of warm white. And if we bring it back towards that point, it gives the shell a curved appearance. And it's a loose stroke. It is not a meticulous one. Like that. And don't forget those little ridges over here. They need a highlight too. Little highlight on that hinge fin. So I'm going to dry that. Then we're going to have a little bit of fun shading them. We're going to use asphaltum to shade this shell. So same brush, I'm using my 3/8 angled shader. A little bit of asphaltum. We don't need a ton of it on the brush. And we're going to separate these two shells with a float right there where they overlap. And then take that float right down onto that background because we want a nice clean float at that edge. Look at our shell. So we've got a nice separation between those two. Yay, asphaltum. And we're going to start deepening shadows and deepening and separating elements. So there we go. I'm going to float the edge of our shell with heavily thinned asphaltum. And I'm going to start with this little one back here because I want to bring that float all the way along the edge of the shell. And I'm keeping it tight to the edge because I want this area to stay bright white. And look at the elevation it gives to the shell. The shell has become a little higher right in here and lower at that edge. And you'll see it most dramatically on this one, I think. So again, I'm going to pick up a little asphaltum and I'm going to shade right here on that hinge fin. Just like so. And then I'm going to float very tightly along the edge of the shell, right at the edge. So the darkest value is at the furthest edge of the shell. And that is what gives the height, that highest point. It gives it a nice little lift. And if at any point your shell looks flat, just deepen that little shadow right at the edge. And look at the difference. So now all of a sudden we've got these really nice, deeply shaded, a little more in here, I think. That's better. And we'll do the same thing for our shell here. Now we have another little element here we have to concern ourselves with, and it's this starfish. Because the starfish is sitting on top of our seashell, we need a nice little shadow in there, right here, to give our starfish a little elevation. And then we need to do the same thing to the edge of our shell here. Now, if you find that your shell is not looking as bright as you would like it to, don't be afraid to take a little bit of titanium white, because it is white. You can use it. Little titanium white on your brush. If you feel your shell is looking a little flat, you can take your titanium white and a round brush or a rigger, whatever brush you're accustomed to using. Thin out a little bit. You don't need a ton of it, just a little. And then you can go to the highest point of your shell, which is right here. And you can bring in just a little stroke of warm white. If at any time you feel your shell doesn't have enough height. So that little bit of titanium white just brings that highlight up a little bit. Just like that. Never a bad thing to have a little titanium white handy. There we go. So a little titanium white all goes a long, long way. There's Vicky. Hi, Vicky. So I'm going to dry that, and then we're going to tackle our starfish. I love the starfish in this. It's just such a simple piece to do. So our base color for this starfish is coral shell. I'm going to use a little bit of this new color called Coral Buzz. This to me is like a neon version of bright salmon or tea berry. It is such a bright color, and it's such a fun one that I just had to use it in this piece. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of fast dry glaze. We're going to float the outside edge of our starfish with this Coral Buzz. And it is such a cool color, but watch this. Our starfish is going to get very bright very quickly. I just loved this color for this. So it's a loose float at the outside edge of our starfish. Remember what I said about it being, although I swear it does not show up on the camera, but if you have some, play with it over top of coral shell, it just pops. It is such a vibrant color. It's almost like a neon version of tea berry, which is another favorite color of mine. I love tea berry. And again, I'm not looking for meticulous, crisp, clean, perfect floats. I think you guys would probably tip over if I ever said, no, it must be perfect. It must. No, it must not. So there we go. I've got, look at that Coral Buzz. That stuff just jumps off of this surface. Ooh, pearl metallic would be pretty. Linda, yes, I think that would be very pretty. So I'm going to dry that. And then we're going to have a little bit of fun with dip dots. And I'm going to put a little of each of my colors on my palette. I'm going to give myself a clean palette because I can't see anything. There's no room left to play. So on my palette, I've got bright salmon, Coral Buzz. I kid you not, it looks like a neon version. Little bit of coral shell. And a little bit of warm white. And I know this next color is going to be a little like, why? Country red. Carol, I've been watching you post your pieces. They're amazing. So we're going to have a little fun with dip dots. We're going to start with a little bit of that bright salmon. I'm going to use it on, I'm using the heel of my brush just because I like it. And I'm going to put a series of little dip dots all along the edge of my starfish. Now, the dip dots, not perfect, not all the same size. I think they're more fun that way. And you're going to go all the way around your starfish, dip dotting like so. No straight lines, no regular lines, no particular pattern, just dip dots like so, all the way around. Random, some large, some teeny tiny, everywhere, all the way along the outside edge. Now we're only coming in about 1/4 of an inch, maybe less. But this is just the first row, like the first bunch. And we're going to go all the way around our starfish. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now, if some of them happen to sneak off the edge, give you a rough edge, that's okay. It actually adds to the look of the starfish to have those irregularities. I don't know if you've ever seen a starfish, especially these big ones. They are not smooth. They have all sorts of irregularities on them. Some of them even have missing limbs. But they are super cool. Nifty creatures, though. So that's my bright salmon all the way along. I like it. Pretty cool, yeah. And then I'm going to take that coral buzz and we're going to go same method, sort of the next row. They should kind of intermix a little bit. I know you can't see this on the screen because they all look like the same color, but they really are not. The coral buzz is considerably brighter than the bright salmon. And if you're painting along with those colors, you'll see the difference immediately. So we're going to go all the way around, a little more, I shouldn't say a little more, a little less of them, and a little more sporadic. Tuck a few in and amongst. But the idea is to gradually fill in this space with a variety of these colors. So I've got the coral buzz. I didn't want to have too many, and I do want them to be a bit more random. So almost there. Look at that. So I've got that first row in. Then I'm going to pick up that base color. Remember our coral shell. It's a little lighter, but it's going to give us texture in there. I like the sort of the randomness of this. I like the change in value, the change in color. It's pretty interesting. So, pretty nifty. We've got those 3 colors in. I'm going to use a little bit of warm white now, because the starfish has several high points. I'm going to make a row of smaller dots that come towards the center from each of those arms. Let's call them arms. Like that. And again, they don't have to be perfect. I'm a firm believer that they're far more interesting. And then I'm just going to create a circle, quasi-circle, in the center of our starfish, with a few little dots. There we go. And then we're going to fill in the remaining empty space with a little bit of that coral shell and a little bit of warm white. Just because this is the higher point of this, it's more for the texture and less for the color, if that makes any sense. Just a few dots in here. There we are. Now we have to add some shading to this, obviously. And the first set of shadings we're going to do with the dip dots, but we're going to use a little bit of that country red. And the dots are going to be small. And they're going to be in this area here, in that deepest area of each of the arms. So I'm only going to use a few of them, and they're going to be pretty tight together. It's one of those things. I don't want to use it too much, but we need the shading. And just in this little area here. I'm going to keep the dots fairly small. And I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to let that dry. I'll take my dryer to it. So this needs to dry quite well because we're going to put a shadow over top of this, and I don't want to mess with that too much. So I'm going to give that a chance to dry really well, and in the meantime we're going to do a little bit of finishing work on the rest of this piece. It'll give me a chance, for those of you that missed the first half or the first portion of this when we were doing the background, to get an idea of how I did that. So I have a line right here on my surface, and I have another one here, and I'm using a pen to do this. I'm actually using a IdentoPen. I have the worst time remembering the name of this silly thing, but I did manage to get it right this time. So I'm just using my IdentoPen to darken that line to form the boards of this piece. And you can add shadows to that if you want to. Et voila. And then a little asphaltum to age them. So a little bit of asphaltum, just to age that line a little bit on both sides. Just need a float on either side of that line. Doesn't have to be much. I just want to finish this one out complete. It's a little float of asphaltum on that line. We've already distressed our lettering, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. There we go. So if you're like me and completely forgot to do something, you can always come back in and do it. But I wanted to take a minute to, there we go. I'm happy with that. That'll do. Ta-da. There we go. So we've got a little bit of finishing work to do on this rope, and I like using my gel pen for this because the gel pen, you can use black paint too. I just use the pen because it's easier. I like going around my rope with my gel pen with a nice sketchy line. It does a couple of things. It adds to the texture of the rope, but it also gives us a nice definitive outline to this without being hard-edged. I really don't like a hard-edged look, especially on pieces that are meant to look distressed or meant to look older. I like a more sketchy appearance. It outlines things nicely visually, and at the same time you can add a little texture to things. If you prefer to do this with a liner brush, just keep the paint very, very thin and very, very fine. And don't use too much of it. It's just all intended to be, if you look at it, it's not hard-edged. It's just fuzzy. It keeps that rope looking ropish. I like the fuzziness of it. I also like the imperfections. That's my thing. I like imperfections. There we go. And if you want to, you can do the same thing to the edges of the shells if you feel it needs it. I don't. I like the more muted look of this. So, as I said, you can go around, clean up your rope a little bit. I like those sketchy, imperfect lines. It just, to me, it works. And if you're going to do any of this for mixed media, I love seeing bits of old paper, bits of rusty metal, things like that added into it. I just love that look. So don't be afraid to add things to your piece. I just think it's such fun. So you can adjust shadows, tweak shadows all you like. I just want to make sure that starfish is dry before I tackle this next bit. I will finish out the lines. We're just going to add some shading and a little dry brushing to our starfish to give this a little depth. Right now it just looks kind of flat, but we're going to make it pop off that surface really nicely. And this is how we're going to do that. Make sure it's dry, close enough for us. Hi, Maze. So I'm going to grab a little bit of Joe Sonia's and a little bit of asphaltum on my 1/2-inch angle. Maze is chatty. And we're going to put a nice little shadow under our shell and down those sides like that. And up. I like asphaltum over top of these colors. They have that, already have an earthy feel to them. So putting a little asphaltum over top of them just works. So a little bit of asphaltum, like so. It's that, remember the country red that's in there? That just helps deepen these shadows nicely. But I like my asphaltum. Look at that. Hi, Mace. She's chatty. Is she chatty? Or are you witchy? Hi, Mom. Hi, baby. Sass. Nothing but
Being
sass.
sassy. No.
She gnashes her teeth. It's hilarious.
Really? You bite me and then give me a kiss.
Yeah. She was tasting you. There we go. Brenda Hatfield, welcome. I have a whole bunch of friends in NZ. AZ.
Arizona?
Arizona. So we're going to add a little bit of highlight to our starfish. I'm going to grab my... Where'd it go? Hey. Mace, that's enough.
Enough.
So I'm going to come back to my little scumbler. And we're going to just dry brush a little highlight on the top of my starfish.
Grumble, grumble.
Nobody's paying enough attention to her.
No, she just woke up.
Oh, that's why.
Batteries are recharged, ready to cause chaos.
There we go. So I've got a nice little highlight on the top of my starfish. It's funny because you can't see it on camera. There's quite a few things on here you can't see on camera until I bring them really close, and then they just get fuzzy. But that texture that we created when you're dry brushing over top of those dots that are the same color as the background, they get brighter. And look at the texture we get. So they stand up really nicely and just become quite a textured element to our starfish. So I'm going to quickly finish out our rope with my gel pen. Now, at this point, you can deepen any shadows that you feel are perhaps a little wanting. You can adjust highlights to suit yourself. You can tweak things to your heart's content. But to me, I'm quite happy with this. I'm just going to finish out this rope a little bit because I like my texture. So I like this gel pen. I like this hairy look that it gives it. That it's imperfect and that I can add texture to it at any time. So there's only one more thing I really need to do to this, and that is to add a little bit of sand. I like some sand. So I'm going to use my fugly brush and a little bit of thinned lamp black. I've got warm white on my palette. So I'm going to take a little asphaltum and a little bit of lamp black. I'm going to mix the two together just to make a warmer black. And I'm going to focus on a couple of specific places. I'm going to avoid the shells. I'm going to pay attention to some of the corners like this. And I'm going to get in close and spatter lightly. Very lightly. Focusing more on those corners. Like that. So less, I don't have any up here, but I have quite a bit down here and in these corners. And I like that. So then I'm going to use a little bit of warm white the same way. I'm going to grab a little water or glaze in my brush. And I'm going to use warm white as well. And I'm going to spatter that. Now, the nice thing about the warm white is if it happens to get on the shells of the starfish, that's okay. I just didn't want the black there. So a little bit of that in there. and dry it. Oh my goodness, what did I do? How did I do it? That would be my question. Must have run off. Oh, my stars. I don't know. I don't know how I did that. Talk about... I don't know how I did that. It must have dripped. There we go. There we go. Good heavens. Here we are. I'll dry this really well because it's me. How many names? We haven't got the wheel loaded up yet. Or do we? We do. How many names are on it?
211.
211 names.
12.
12.
I'm adding one more as we speak. Miss Brenda Hatchfield.
Yep.
She's got to be on the wheel.
Yes. Oh, Lucy's back. Here we go. Well, hopefully she's not in as much pain as she's been. So the only thing I have left to do to this piece, well, I'm going to finish out the edge later, but there we go. Put my scribblature in the lower right-hand corner. And that's it. The beach house welcome.
Beach house welcome. So Miss Brenda Hatfield, one of our newcomers, is a 30-year dog groomer.
Oh, wow. Well, welcome. You're in a good spot.
You're in a very good spot.
Will there be a companion piece to this? Yes, there will. Of course there will, because I'm a beach fan. So, yes, absolutely.
She wants to see a quick pic of the fur baby. We'll do you one better.
We'll do you one better. Our fur baby is a Belgian Malinois named Maze.
Who likes to find pieces of cardboard?
Yes, and she's very good at it.
Yep.
There we go. So, just for fun today, we're going to give away the finished piece from today's class as one of our giveaways. So we're going to have 4 today.
4 names to pick from?
4 names to pick from. So let's get that wheel going.
Give me 1 second to set that up. Hopefully it's saved. Sometimes my login doesn't like to do. Yes, it did. 208.
208. Awesome. So just FYI, if your name is called from the wheel, make sure that you hop over to the website at tracymoreau.net and send us your shipping information. We can't ship it to you if we don't know where it's going. And anything that is unclaimed after 2 weeks goes back in the bin and we use it for future draws.
There we go.
Linda, thank you. I'm glad you like it. It's all boogie. Oh my goodness. I guess it's full.
I think I got it. Why are you licking the tripod?
Linda, I'm so glad you got your book. Congratulations.
There we go.
Okay.
My Sharpie.
You got your sticky notes? Good to go.
And I'm guessing these are the prizes?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
So just to reiterate, prizes today are a brush set, courtesy of DecoArt. They're the DecoArt Designer Series brushes, so you have a set of those. I believe they're rounds and liners. And also a limited edition Tombow Mono mechanical pencil. I couldn't get that out. With a mono eraser. It is a limited edition set. We have 3 of those to give away. Plus, there's always some other goodies in that pouch as well from Renee and I. So, let's see who the first winner is. And the drum roll is Patsy Justice. Kathy Krasowski, pick me.
We don't do the picking.
We don't do the picking. The wheel picks.
Lady Luck. And Judy does not like Lady Luck.
No.
Judy Thacker.
No, Judy Thacker. She's only won, I think, once or twice in 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And the next one goes to
I'm a transplant king to Kingman. Number 2.
Arlie Menzigan. Menzigan. I'm going to mess that one up, Arlene. I'm so sorry.
I'm going to mess it up here.
Or Menzigian.
Menzigian?
I don't know. I'm not sure what the pronunciation is. But I could bugger it up in numerous ways. And we have one more.
2 more.
2 more. One more pen set. Yeah.
1 more drawing set.
Woohoo! Holly Carr.
I haven't seen that name up in a while.
No, I have not. Holly is just up the road.
We don't even have to pay for shipping.
Yeah, we do. It's not that close.
Oh, I thought you meant like literally.
No. No, she doesn't live in the village.
Nearby though.
She's nearby, though. And the finished piece.
Ooh, the finished piece.
Brenda Sawyer. So, Brenda, we'll get that out to you.
I think we have our shipping.
I think we do, yes. Awesome. Oh, Kathy, that's a sweet thing to say. Thank you. Good heavens, that chat window is flying.
Oh yeah, she's little.
Well, thanks to everybody for joining us here every Saturday, as you do. We appreciate you so much. Come and join us again next Saturday. We're going to be doing a funny piece. Let's just say it involves bugs. And we will see you then. We are, however, not going to be live. The video will be recorded in advance for Saturday. Renee is working and I'm taking a much needed day off. So you guys will have something to keep you occupied on Saturday anyway. So watch for the video. We will, it will go live at our It will, what's the word? Premiere. Thank you. It will premiere at the same time as our normal live schedule. So be sure to keep watching. The pattern will be available on Monday on both websites, on Tracy Creates and on tracymoreau.net. In the meantime, everybody have a safe and wonderful weekend.
If Brenda Hatfield.
And Brenda, if you're watching.
That's Miss Mays.
That's Miss Mays. She's in Sky Jail. She doesn't like Sky Jail.
Oh yeah, now you want to bite me.
And just watching the chats flying by. Everybody have a safe and good weekend. Mwah. We love you. Stay safe.
pet your dog.
Yeah. Pet your dog. And your cat. And your husband, if needs be.
Keep that PG rated. Now the buttons don't work.
What did you do to the
I
buttons?
didn't do nothing.
Nothing?
No.
Nothing.
Yeah. Buttons don't work.
Brenda says she's gorgeous. Oh, goodness. Hi. Hi. There's a nose.